You can almost hear it. The shuffle of silk, the breath of strangers too close, the scrape of boots on cold stone floors. The bed is yours, yet you are not alone. They wait, candlelight flickering on faces half eager, half judging. You are told to lie still, to smile, to prove before God and man that what is holy has been done. Before we begin this descent into the medieval marriage bed, take a moment to breathe. What you're about to hear is history at its most intimate and most exposed. If you're watching from Paris, from Karachi, from Sao Paulo, or Seoul, type your city below. It's wild to think that centuries later, we gather again, millions of strangers around one story. Like, subscribe, and let's step into the flickering dark where love was never private, and the bed was never truly yours. In medieval Europe, a wedding was never the end of the ceremony. It was only the intermission. After vows were exchanged beneath vaulted ceilings or in cramped village chapels, after the feasting and the dancing, came the moment everyone was waiting for, the bedding. The newlyweds were led to their chamber like actors to a stage. The guests, sometimes nobles, sometimes priests, followed, bearing torches and laughter, tossing coins or petals onto the sheets. "For luck," they said, though it sounded more like command. The bride's gown was unlaced by other women, her hair let down, her body prepared for view. The groom was stripped to his linen. Some witnesses stayed to see them kiss beneath the covers. Others remained until the covers moved. Only when enough had been seen, enough to make it lawful, were the doors finally shut. Outside, the crowd sang bawdy songs and drank until dawn. Inside, the couple, strangers more often than lovers, lay together in silence heavy as stone. For many, it was the first time they had ever been alone. For others, it was the loneliest moment of their lives. In the age before privacy, marriage was proof of obedience. A woman's virginity was not her own virtue, but her family's reputation, and consummation was evidence of alliance. If the bride bled, the sheets might be carried out as testimony, a flag of honor. If she did not, rumors spread faster than plague. In some towns, the priest himself inspected the linen. A stain was worth more than love. They called it sacred. But what kind of holiness demands witnesses? In the courts of France, annulments were granted only if a marriage had not been made one. That phrase, factum non est, haunted thousands. Husbands testified to their failures, wives to their innocence, and physicians were summoned to prove impotence or deceit. One chronicler wrote of a baron who paraded his naked body before the bishop, declaring, "Behold, my flesh is sound." It was not faith that ruled him, it was fear. Beneath the surface of ritual lay an obsession with fertility. Every child was proof that God's design was working, every barren womb a whisper of sin. Midwives brewed strange tonics of rue and rosemary, bishops preached that pleasure without purpose was devil's work, and women were told that pain in childbirth was Eve's inheritance. In some villages, newlyweds were made to drink wine steeped with animal blood, believing it would stir the humors toward life. Others prayed before relics, splinters of saints' bones said to awaken sleeping wombs. But behind all the ritual, one truth remained constant. The marriage bed was a contract between families, not hearts. A noblewoman in Burgundy wrote to her confessor, "I have learned to be still, as one learns to breathe in a storm." Her husband visited her only on certain feast days, guided more by duty than desire. When he died, she confessed relief, not grief. Even kings were not exempt from scrutiny. When Margaret of Scotland wed the future Louis XV, she was 13. Courtiers joked that the prince found her too childish for sport. The bedding was performed anyway, the sheets displayed, and the chroniclers dutifully recorded that the marriage was lawfully sealed. The truth, like the girl's silence, was never asked. Yet, not every chamber was cold. In the few marriages of affection, the ceremony became a cruel parody of intimacy. Imagine being truly in love, yet forced to prove it before laughing eyes. One anonymous poet wrote, "We were watched like thieves stealing a kiss from our own lives. Even passion had to perform." The church claimed it was protecting souls. Lust, they said, was the root of ruin, marriage the only remedy. But in binding desire to duty, they made both miserable. The bed became an altar, the act a confession. And for centuries, the echo of those whispered prayers and muffled cries filled the walls of stone chambers across Europe. Some couples escaped the ritual, eloping in forests or taking oaths before no witnesses but the stars. Yet even then, fear followed. Without the church's blessing, their children were called bastards, their love an offense. To be unseen was to be unholy. The medieval marriage bed was never empty. It carried not just bodies, but expectations, the weight of bloodlines, of faith, of eyes unseen yet always watching. Every night was a trial, every sigh a testimony. Centuries later, the sheets have long turned to dust, but the questions remain. When did love become law? When did the most private act of two souls become property of the world? The candles flicker out. The guests have left. Yet, if you listen closely, beneath the silence, you can still hear the breath of those who once lay beneath watchful eyes, trying, in the dark, to find something like love. Night in the medieval world was a living thing. When the last ember dimmed and the bell of Compline faded, the dark pressed in like a tide. Walls of timber creaked, animals stilled, and somewhere in that thick, suffocating silence, a weight settled on the chest. Invisible, crushing, alive. They said it was no dream. It was the devil himself. In monasteries and peasant huts alike, men and women awoke gasping, unable to move, their eyes wide, their hearts thundering. They felt breath against their skin, a touch like smoke, and they knew an unholy visitor had come. The church gave them names: incubus for the demon who preyed upon women, succubus for the spirit that drained men in their sleep. To wake marked not safety, but contamination. One's body had been invaded, one's soul tempted. The medieval world could forgive a sin confessed, but not one unseen. And so the confessional became a theater of whispered horror. Monks recorded tales of nuns who claimed the devil came to them nightly, bearing the face of Christ. Others swore to have birthed monstrous offspring, half human, half shadow. Each story deepened the terror. That temptation might strike even the purest heart, unseen and uninvited. One manuscript from the 15th century tells of Sister Agnes of Trier. She was found in her cell at dawn, pale as linen, her hands clutching her rosary until the beads had cut her palms. "He came in silence," she said to her confessor. "He spoke no word, yet my soul burned." Her cries echoed through the cloister for weeks until the abbot ordered an exorcism. As the priest's Latin chants filled the chapel, Agnes convulsed and screamed, "He will return when the candles die." She died 3 days later. They buried her beneath the chapel floor, and for years no one slept in that cell again. But not all victims were cloistered souls. In the villages, where superstition filled the gaps left by doctrine, these nocturnal visitations became explanations for everything that could not be spoken aloud. A man's sudden lust, a woman's unwanted pregnancy, even the restless twitch of a body at night, all were signs of a demonic hand. Sleep itself was dangerous. Dreams were traps. Theologians of the time debated whether demons could truly take flesh. St. Thomas Aquinas reasoned that they could not create life, but they might steal it, taking seed from a man as a succubus and delivering it to another woman as an incubus. In this way, sin could spread invisibly, even between strangers who had never met. "Thus," he wrote, "the devil becometh a midwife to corruption." How could anyone sleep knowing this? In England, a miller's wife named Joan was accused of lying with the devil after her husband claimed he saw her levitating in bed. The trial records state, "Her hair did move as if by unseen hands, and she did moan as one in delight." Under torture, Joan confessed that a dark man with eyes like coals visited her thrice each week. She was burned at dawn on Candlemas Day. The villagers said the wind changed direction as the flames rose, and the mill never turned properly again. Such tales were more than superstition. They were mirrors of fear. The body, once the battleground of lust and virtue, had become the front line of spiritual warfare. Every sigh, every shudder could be mistaken for an invitation to the infernal. And yet, beneath the terror, there was something else, an unspoken recognition that desire was stronger than doctrine. Imagine the loneliness of a woman told that every longing she felt was the whisper of Satan. Imagine the guilt of a monk who woke trembling, not from sin, but from a dream he could not control. How many lives were broken not by demons, but by the fear of them? The Church's solution was always purification: holy water, fasting, confession, flagellation. In some monasteries, men whipped themselves until blood soaked the floorboards, believing pain would cleanse the flesh of temptation. In others, priests taught that women's bodies were doors through which the devil walks. Fear made faith absolute and blind. But sometimes in the records of these terrors a strange note appears: doubt. A physician in Paris wrote in 1457 of patients who believed themselves assaulted by spirits, but bore no marks, only exhaustion. He observed that the attacks came most often after great distress or hunger. He dared to suggest the cause was not infernal but natural, the body itself rebelling. His theory vanished into silence. The Church had no patience for ailments that did not serve its moral order. And so, night after night, the old dread continued. Villagers placed iron scissors beneath their pillows, believing demons feared sharp metal. Lovers prayed before lying together, whispering credo and diem between kisses. And mothers taught their daughters to sleep facing the crucifix, lest the shadow come to claim them. The centuries would one day call it sleep paralysis. The modern world would diagnose, explain, and label it. But for those who lived and died under candlelight, there was no science, only scripture and fear. In the medieval night, the line between desire and damnation blurred to nothing. The bed was no longer a place of rest, but a battlefield where heaven and hell wrestled for possession of the soul. Even now, if you lie still long enough, you might feel that weight on your chest, that invisible presence hovering just beyond breath. Call it dream, call it science, but remember, for 1,000 years they called it a demon. Beneath the stained glass and sermons, a different music played: the soft shuffle of silk, the rustle of coins, the laughter muffled behind wooden shutters. While priests thundered against lust from their pulpits, entire cities built their wealth upon it. The medieval world spoke of virtue by day and bought sin by night. In the heart of Paris, just beyond the shadow of Notre Dame, stood a district known simply as Le Grand Châtelet. It was a place of torchlight and perfume, where women leaned from windows and beckoned passing men with a smile practiced to perfection. Brothels were marked with red lanterns, a glow that burned like temptation itself. And though the Church condemned them, kings taxed them. The crown called it regulation. The priests called it necessary evil. The women called it survival. A city ledger from the 14th century lists over 100 licensed houses of women. Each one owed a share of earnings to the crown. In Avignon, even the Pope's city, prostitutes worked under the protection of guards who ensured no holy men were harmed in the night. One chronicler wrote, half in jest, "There is no surer sign of civilization than the brothel, for even sin requires order." But behind the laughter and the candlelight lay a harsher truth. For every sanctioned house, there were dozens hidden in alleys, where the scent of wine mixed with the rot of refuse and the salt of tears. The women who worked there were often widows, beggars, or orphans of war, drawn not by desire but hunger. Some took aliases from saints, mocking the very faith that condemned them. "Call me Magdalene," one was recorded saying to a friar, "for what is repentance without sin?" The contradictions multiplied. Preachers warned men that these women carried disease of the soul and body alike, yet the same men lined up in confession the next morning. Monks penned sermons about chastity while scribes illuminated their manuscripts with grotesques. Half-naked women twined with demons. The artists claimed they were symbols of vice, but the details, the curves, the sly smiles, they told another story. Whispers spoke of the rite of the first night, the ancient claim that a lord could bed a peasant bride before her husband. Historians would later argue it was myth, a symbol of oppression rather than law. But in the medieval imagination, it felt real enough to wound. Ballads told of brides weeping as noblemen approached, and of peasants who fled to forests rather than submit. Whether fact or fable, it revealed a deeper truth, that the body of the poor belonged not to them, but to those who ruled. And yet, rebellion found its way through the cracks. Beneath the guise of feast days and harvest fairs, fertility rites persisted, echoes of older pagan times. In spring, villagers crowned a maiden as the May Queen, her white gown trailing through fields thick with blossom. Men and women danced until dawn, hands finding hands in the dark. The church tried to rename it as Celebration of Mary, but the old magic clung stubbornly to the soil. In the hush of kitchens and midwives' huts, women shared their own forbidden knowledge, herbs to delay conception, charms to cool the humors, powders of pennyroyal or rue mixed in wine. They spoke in riddles and whispered prayers, for discovery meant accusation. "A woman who knows how not to conceive," wrote one bishop, "is a woman in league with hell." And yet such knowledge passed quietly from mother to daughter, as essential to survival as bread. Not all who dealt in pleasure were women. Men, too, sold their company in cities and courts. Pages, actors, and servants found patrons among the powerful. The church had words for them: sodomite, deviant, beast. Yet those same words appear in the diaries of bishops who recorded their penances in trembling script. One monk confessed that he sinned thrice under moonlight, though the devil took no form but beauty. The punishment was fasting and silence. The sin, they said, was unspeakable. Everywhere, the human body became a site of conflict, between faith and hunger, between desire and decree. The same hands that built cathedrals also built bathhouses. In London, the Stews of Southwark operated under royal license. Their women required to take confession every Sunday. Priests were forbidden to enter, officially, yet many did, their collars hidden beneath plain cloaks. One was caught, and when questioned, replied only, "Better a sinner among sinners than a saint alone." But sin had a cost. Disease crept through cities, striking rich and poor alike. Physicians, baffled, spoke of the hot illness of Venus. Women were blamed, of course, punished, flogged, exiled. Men were absolved with prayer. By the 15th century, moral panic surged anew. Brothels were burned, their ashes scattered into rivers. The same kings who once taxed them now sought redemption through fire. When night fell over those cobbled streets and the lanterns flickered one by one, the city's heartbeat slowed but never stopped. Behind every shuttered window, someone was praying, and someone else was pretending not to hear. The church could silence voices, but not breathing. It could condemn desire, but never kill it. In the end, even the holiest men understood. As long as there were bodies, there would be bargains. And as long as there were bargains, the price of flesh would always be paid, in gold, in guilt, or in fire.